loan, and they didn't disclose like they're supposed to according to this provision of the law. Therefore, this loan is null and void, and you walk away with a TV set. Free. Question is, who paid for the TV set? The bank? No. No. The stockholders of the bank. We're back to that issue of group. Does group exist? No. Bank doesn't exist. The group doesn't exist. Stockholders exist. They're the ones that put up the money. And when that loan is written off the asset sheet of the bank, that means that per rata share of all of the value of the bank for each stockholder goes down proportionately. Every stockholder maybe loses 3 cents or 8 cents or $1.50 or whatever it is. But the stockholders are the ones that paid for your free TV set or your free home, whatever the case may be. Is this fair? Well, it's an ethical issue. And my reason for bringing this up is not to tell you whether it's fair or not, but to make you aware of the ethical issue involved. And then you have to make your own decision. Most people are not aware of this ethical issue at all. It's just a question of, well, the banks are dirty guys, and God, we got a free TV set. What's wrong with that? You know? Not realizing that somebody, those stockholders, which could be your Aunt Matilda, could be your mother or your father, could be the investment firm that's holding your retirement fund, could be the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, and whoever's got money, you know, in this bank, innocently invested. You might say, well, they should know better. They've invested in a corrupt institution. They should pay. Okay, if that's your answer, okay. But how many of us are invested in corrupt institutions? Just about everybody, because there are very few non-corrupt institutions out there. You can say pretty much the same thing for all of the major corporations as you now say about the banks. So what about you folks that are invested in some of these big corporations? No. What about you folks that are holding government bonds? Isn't that a corrupt thing to do? So where do you draw the line? The fact of the matter is that somebody has to pay for that TV set or that home that is that's made free and clear, because the banks, those big bad banks, made a mistake somewhere legally, and so they have to foreclose the loan. From my point of view, if I were in a situation like that, I would go to the banks and I'd say, okay, as you know, I don't have to pay any of this because the court has just decided that I get it free and clear. But I think you fellas deserve something, and I'm prepared to make a magnanimous offer to you of exactly 2.5% of the loan. Do you want it or not? And they'd say, we'll take it. And my conscience would be clear, and they would be paid for their service, and I would be very, very happy. But this is an ethical issue, and I'm sure that in this room there are a lot of people who wouldn't make that same decision. And I couldn't blame you if you didn't. Okay, move on. We have to think in terms of how we protect our existing savings. Okay? And now we're down to this issue of cash versus gold and silver and all of that sort of thing. I've read just about all the advice I think that anybody has ever made on this topic, and some of it sounds pretty good to me, some of it sounds pretty bad, and I've just sort of put together my own mishmash of ideas that I like, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. I think that we all should keep cash to some extent. Cash is the medium of exchange in our society. And if we want to pay a bill, you want to buy a meal, buy some groceries, you know, we have to have cash. And it's quite possible that there could be a calamity where the electronic systems go down and you won't be able to clear a credit card because the systems aren't working. Or if there's some kind of a major crisis, the banks might be closed temporarily or for a long period of time, which means that checks won't clear. And merchants will not accept credit cards or checks. What would you do? How many people here have at least a 2-month supply of cash stashed away? Well, maybe you shouldn't tell me, because then I'll find out where you live. But I'll bet you there are darn few people that hold that much cash. I firmly believe that it's a good idea. just to cover that emergency situation where cash can be the only medium of exchange for small value. If you want to talk about larger medium of exchange, we'll come to that next. But cash will be king, or would be king, under a condition of great crisis. So I recommend at least 2 months worth of normal expenditures being held somewhere in your house as cash. When I say 2 months, I mean 2 months worth of living expenses, kind of expenditures that you would have to make in order to keep the wolf away from your doors. The next thing, though, is to get out of money. Having put aside a couple of months' worth of money in the form of cash, the next thing to be very clear on is to get out of money of all kinds. Not only cash, but investments, savings accounts, insurance policies, and I hate to say that you should get out of an insurance policy because I'm not saying that, but if you have an insurance policy with cash value, I would recommend that you convert that to term insurance as quickly as possible. Get the cash values out because, let's face it, well, as you know my opinion, we're heading into hyperinflation, and if we do, that cash is going to suffer tremendously. I remember reading about the experience of the German people during that, you remember the great inflationary cycle they had, when the Deutschmark just lost all of its value and people wound up using the paper money to burn in their furnaces and their stoves because its only real value was for heat. They had so much of it, it was so worthless. And those were the days when people who thought they were protected for retirement because they had cash values in their insurance policies were wiped out. I remember reading the account of one lady who said that she had saved all of her life, she and her husband, and they had let the cash values acquire in an insurance policy. And then finally this inflationary cycle hit, and it got to be like a whirlwind. So it happened relatively quickly there toward the end. And I've forgotten the dollar value, but let's just say she had $500,000 saved in equivalent terms of American money today. But when it came time to cash it in, and she had to send the form into the insurance company to get her $500,000 out, the postage stamp cost $600,000. So it's gone. That's what happens if you have money in any place, and the value is going down. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. Inflation is inflation. That means the destruction of the dollar. In any place in your portfolio that you have an investment or savings denominated in dollars, you are standing on the railroad track, and the train is coming right toward you. And I don't know why you would want to stay there. I would recommend that you get off of that track as soon as possible. So what do you do with it? If you don't have it in cash, the next question is, well, where do you put it? Well, there are lots of places to put it. Anything with a tangible value, tangible assets, that's the broad category. Anything. I mean, if you had a warehouse full of tires, you know, commonly used tires, that's a tangible asset. You could buy a commodity of just about anything that you know is going to be needed. I always mention tires. I don't know why that always comes to mind, but it does. Guess I better check my tires. They probably need some new ones. But you know, you could groceries are a good thing to invest in, especially those with a long-term shelf life. In times of a crisis, you know, if people get desperate for food, that can become very, very valuable. And we'll talk about precious metals. Perhaps under those conditions, the most precious of all metals is lead. Because you might have to defend your food and your water and whatever other precious metals you have. It's not a bad idea. Look around. Think of what you could acquire in terms of tangible assets. Well, right on the top of the list, of course, is bullion. Precious metals, bullion, gold, silver, palladium, so forth. The most commonly sought after is gold, second is silver, and so forth. A very good